time to add the last part of the sort of, what I also perceive as being part of the expression, which is the gesture. This, I think, does so much for your model than just having your model maybe look a little to the side, up or down, but actually moving parts of. That's also why I emphasize so much to have the shoulder and the chest connected to your face sculpt, just because it adds so much to, just in terms of pure personality. You can tell so much from how the model is positioned, basically.
Yeah, I think adding like actual posture to the body can really do wonders.
Yeah, and that's where I would use the transposed lines, like here, just because you could probably do this with you could totally do this with the Gizmo. I'm just more comfortable with the transposed lines because it represents bones basically inside the body.
Yeah, I have a lot more control with this.
Yeah,
you can control the pivot a lot more than with this. Well, you can totally do the exact same thing, but also we're old school.
Yeah. Yeah, so here it's like, so I had to make a decision whether I wanted the shoulder up or I wanted the shoulder down, like the front, the leading shoulder, basically. I opted for keeping the shoulder down, I think, just because it gave it a more sort of playful, like the shoulder up towards the direction she was looking was more of a seductive look, and keeping the shoulder more up towards the back and then lowering it towards the direction she was looking gave a more playful look instead of this, like, because I wanted to take it away from too sexy. That wasn't the intention of this. So
what you could also do after this as well, which is not done in the series, is like adding a bit of cloth to her, like just some kind of like a toga or whatever it might be, just something going over her, which could just make it look a bit more classical.
Yeah. And one thing is just using the transposed lines. That's just to get things roughly into shape. The reality is, if you were to move your body like this, that would be, like you're a robot. You wouldn't just turn your head. That was it. Like, you always want, like, maybe you shift your shoulders forward a little bit. And you drop one shoulder.
Yeah,
that's really important. And another important one here is just the clavicles. You can see they're completely straight. That would suffocate her.
Yeah.
So we want to make a more natural clavicle-looking shape.
I find a lot of women have very defined clavicles.
Yeah,
a lot of men have less defined clavicles, and I think that's just because the muscle mass on it.
Yeah,
if you don't have a lot of muscle, you're going to see the clavicles really clearly.
Yeah.
But if you're super thick with all the beefy muscles in the world, then you're not going to see the clavicles.
That's also one of those classical beauty features. You have those pronounced clavicles. It can really help the feminine look a lot. You're always going to have this messed up part in the neck when you rotate it. Basically, I just erase what was there and then just redo it, just because I can't really use it for much.
Yeah, as we said before, don't try to fix stuff like that. Just
get rid of it.
It's not that time consuming. It's just a neck.
Yeah, and if your foundation is solid in anatomy, you should be able to sort of figure out, okay, even with this sort of twisted body, what would the muscles and the bones do in this?
And if you can't do it, give her a piece of cloth.
It's like the whole not drawing feet, hide them behind rocks.
Yeah. Just do tons of rocks over her.
And I think now we're approaching my favorite muscle in the body.
Is that the sternocleidomastoid?
It is indeed the sternocleidomastoid.
Such a nice muscle.
It's such an elegant muscle, I think. And, the way that works is like that. How do you even explain it? Like the opposite side of where you're looking at is like...
Yeah, I mean, we can just use the names for it, though. Sternocleidomastoid. It's not just a mouthful. It goes from the sternum to the clavicle, then to the mastoid process just behind the ear. So the way I like to think about this muscle is just a straight line. Wherever the head is moving, it doesn't really matter that much. It's just, regardless of where the head is, it's still just a straight line from basically behind the ear to the sternum and the clavicle. Yeah. That way, muscles don't really bend or do any of that crazy stuff. It does have a light bulge just because it's going over the neck, which is more cylindrical. But basically, this muscle behind the ear, you can actually feel that yourself. There's a little triangular notch behind your ear and down to the sternum.
That's just the mastoid process up there.
Yeah.
One thing, an important note, is that you will, when you're turning your head to the side, you will never have activation of both heads, or like both of your sternocleidomastoids on either side, you can't have them both active, being like you turn your head. You always have one that's more pronounced. You can totally indicate the other one, but it'll never be as pronounced as the one that's sort of like facing the direction of the head.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same, but it's a little bit like the bicep and triceps. You can't really flex them when you're rotating. They're there to rotate the head.
Yeah.
And by rotating the head, then you're activating them. You can't rotate the head to both sides
at the same time. You can sort of, there are ways to activate them, I think by pushing your head forward, maybe exactly. then you activate both heads at the same time. But that's not what she's doing in this case.
It seems like you can still have your arms stretched out and flex your biceps, but it's not a full on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, so with the biceps and the triceps, one is, I think it's called like, it's a reciprocal muscle. So one takes over from the other. So once you start to flex your triceps, you automatically start to flex less in your bicep, because that's just the relationship that the muscles have with each other.
Pretty smart system.
It's very smart, yeah.
It's almost like nature has figured this stuff out.
Yeah. So this way, keeping the leading shoulder more down is just a way to, I think, invite some more playfulness into the sculpture. She's not as secretive, not as seductive, but she's more open and she's seeking something. That was what I was thinking when I was doing this pose. And here for a man, if I was having a bare chest like this, I'd probably start to indicate lightly where the clavicular part of the chest would go. You can see it's just there a little bit, but I would probably define that more. And in doing so with a man, you would actually take away the contrast in volume between the chest and the clavicle, making the clavicle less pronounced. It's always the transition from neck to traps is a tricky one to get right. And I think it's just something you have to practice and again look at more reference, because it changes a lot once you start to turn the head as well. So just be wary of that shape. And you can see we sort of slimmed down the neck a little bit as well and gotten rid of sort of the bulginess, if that's even a word, in the neck, just again to make it just a little more feminine. At this point, it's basically just some tiny, tiny refinements, just small things that catch my eye, but it's essentially, that's about it. There might be some small tweaks here and there, but this is the expression I'm sort of aiming for and the gesture that I'm happy with.